Hello, PHP, and welcome to this month's National Annuities Training webinar. We've got our guest trainer today is Karl Rodriguez out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Karl just barely hit Senior Marketing Director, so congrats to Karl on that one. Also, just recently at the Million Dollar Annuity Circle as well, so he's definitely on the up and up. And so we're definitely glad to have him. We're coming off a fantastic week at Train the Trainers last week. I personally was really excited to hear so many people talking about annuities from the stage. I'm glad this is really starting to become a focus. Before we jump into it, I don't want to take too much time from Karl, but I want to just remind everybody of a couple monthly promotions that are going on with annuities. First one, these are both monthly. First one is anyone who writes 2 apps with a minimum of $50,000 in premium is going to be invited to a monthly training call. It's a special call that Sheena Sapala does for the Million Dollar Annuity Circle members. So anyone that does 2 apps and 50K gets to be invited to be on that call. And then also, if you do 3 apps and a total of $300,000 in business, that'll get you an extra 1% on the total carrier payout once all that business places. So keep that in mind. Want to make sure everyone's following us on social media as well, at PHP Annuities on Instagram and Facebook. Karl's going to show us his Instagram tag here in just a second, but Karl's, if you want to follow his, is Shield Financial _LLC. But you'll see that again just in a second. And then for questions, as we're going through it, if you have questions that come up, on the right side of your screen, down toward the bottom, there is a questions box with a drop down. You can go ahead and type your questions in there. We'll have a few minutes to get through questions toward the end. And then I just want to let everybody know that be watching out for a new annuities product grid. We've been working on kind of assembling a one-pager to show all the annuity products we've got with some of the bullet points. So be watching out for that coming out here pretty soon. So with that, I just want to say first, thanks to everyone for taking the time today. Thanks, Karl, for joining us. And let's kick it over to Karl. So go ahead and take it away, Karl.
Awesome. First off, thank you for giving me the opportunity to go ahead and share what has been working for me to also get this company to the next level. I noticed a lot of the annuities, I believe, especially when we're doing our FLSs, I believe we leave a lot of money on the table. One thing I'll tell you is sometimes we're maybe just not asking the right questions, and I want to make sure we get this company to start asking for annuities. Maybe you might not be the certified senior retirement specialist or pension specialist or annuity specialist, whatever you want to call yourself. But I will tell you this, it's always good to have somebody in the office who can do that. So you can say, you know what, just grab a statement. Let me go back to the office. Let me work with one of our senior specialists when it comes to retirement. And then we can go ahead and be able to provide a second opinion on what people have. So first off, this is not just about annuities. This is pretty much helping everybody understand how I structure and my philosophy when it comes to financial planning in general. Obviously, we don't have our securities licenses or anything like that, but we're doing pretty much everything we can in our power, not just with life insurance, disability insurance, but also when it comes to a safe haven for retirement. Annuities are a very, very great product when it comes to helping people, especially in the worst times when the market goes down. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if this is good here. Can you see my screen okay? Do you see the full screen? Yeah? You don't see my behind the scenes scene, all right? You good? Give me a thumbs up, Forrest.
Oh, there we go. Now we're seeing the presenter screen that has both of your like the slide and the next slide.
Okay, give me a second. Bear with me here, guys.
No problem.
Is that good?
There we go. Now we're seeing your full screen. Yes.
Okay, awesome. So, believe it or not, I've been in the industry. I was with the practice company for about 5 years. I jumped ship around 2016. And one thing I'll tell you is, pretty much this is just from a bunch of seminars and stuff I learned from the previous company, and I started learning through the process. And now I just created my own slide when it came to helping people understand the financial structure for when it comes to financial planning. But one of the first things I want you guys to understand when it comes to sitting down with somebody, especially when we're focused primarily on the client sales, first thing that you want to do is you want to build rapport. Obviously, you utilize form, family, occupation, recreation, message. Then you're going to ask some questions. You're going to transition to the setup. Obviously, we're there to just share some concepts and strategies. We're not here to sell people, like Sheena Sapal said. We're here to share the information, right? Now, imagine if you had 5 to maybe 7 appointments per day and you close 2 to 3. It's a good day, right? So it's about how much activity can you do per day. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I would say I probably do, like yesterday, I did about 9 appointments were on the calendar. Believe it or not, only 3 people showed up, believe it or not. But the biggest thing is, I ask these simple questions, A, B, C, and D. Have you ever had a chance to sit down and work with a financial professional, maybe an insurance or investment advisor at your work, at your bank? Maybe your tax advisor or estate planning attorney carries a license that's adjacent to his actual trade. We like to work with those individuals to make sure we're all on the same page. By the way, I will tell you this, it's not a good idea to have, especially when your client has 3 financial advisors, make sure you get their names and phone numbers, because it's kind of like having 3 boyfriends, right? Or for the girls or for the guys, right? You don't want to have 3 financial advisors. Look, at the end of the day, 5 plus 5 is 10, 2 plus 8 is 10, negative 10 plus 20 equals 10. It doesn't matter how you get to 10, what matters is you get to 10, right? So every philosophy works. It all depends on who you're going to listen to. So one thing I'll tell you is that after we're going to go ahead and ask them those questions, it kind of piques their interest now. And I also mentioned to them, I said, look, when's the last time you ever sat down and did your financial plan? I mean, we spent a lot of time sitting down, planning our quinceañera, our wedding, birthdays, but we never got a chance to really sit down and maybe spend 20 to 30 minutes planning our life, right? What we're going to do in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I kind of intrigue and disturb them a little bit and let them understand that, hey, you know what? I'm here to really provide a good service. The third thing, as I mentioned, we provide concepts and strategies. We're going to go ahead and share some information, some wealthy principles that's going to help people position themselves so that they can retire comfortably. And I'll show you that here in a second. Number 4, after we're done sharing that information, that's the transition where you're going to be able to go ahead and sit down and gather all the data. This is where you're all doing the fact finding. You're looking at the income. If you treated your personal finance like a business, are you going in business? Are you going out of business, right? Looking at the cash flow. Here's what I will tell you. At the end of the day, on the FLS, on the PHP, I use the 1-page FLS. I print out 2 sheets. It's basically the first page, and then the back side, normally it's supposed to be on the back. There's supposed to be the other side. I keep that blank because I like to take notes. And believe it or not, I actually draw pictures on there to help people understand, to understand how to go ahead and position their finances. All of this is just basically the setup so that we can go ahead and show them to get them a little bit more comfortable with you and opening up their finances. And then at the end of the day, on the first page, it's going to show normally, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to solve, right? You're looking at either A, get out of debt. Number 2, you're looking to either probably buy a house. Obviously, if you're in this industry, find a realtor, a mortgage lender that's going to give you more face time with this client so you can provide more value. It's always good to go ahead and have adjacent business partners, even if they're not in the business. But eventually, obviously, you make $30, $40, $50,000, you start making 4 or 5 times more of their money. You're going to be able to go ahead and recruit them eventually, right? But at the end of the day, so as you're looking for the goals, you're going to be able to go ahead and distinguish what is their primary focus. Now, usually in this order, traditionally, the average person working a 9 to 5, or 95% of Americans, they want to get out of debt. They want to fix their credit. They want to get all this debt taken care of, especially student loans. That's the reason why we work with Mediator Law Group and Nationwide Student Loans, right? And then after that, they want to buy a house, send them over to the guy who's going to sell them a house. But at the same time, everybody needs to go ahead and protect their not just their family or their mortgage, but they also need to protect their income. So I'll show you how I sell living benefits. And then third, obviously, is creating wealth, building wealth as far as investments and saving money for retirement. By the way, this is just a tip. Anybody who's in their 20s or 30s, when you're doing an FLS, I don't utilize the word retirement because it doesn't really resonate with a lot of people. I utilize create wealth or utilize a vehicle to invest so that they have access to growing money. So I'm going to go ahead and get to the next slide here. This is my concepts and strategies. So when you do the FLS, we flip the page over, and obviously the page on the it's blank. I usually just draw this out because it shows my confidence that I know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, if I'm doing a webinar, I utilize my slides that I created. However, utilizing the slides is also going to be very, very beneficial because it helps you stay on track with the structure. So let's just say you're meeting with a client. Believe it or not, my average client probably makes about $3,000 a month. We're going to say this is a lady. She's 34 years old, single parent. She has kids, right? She drives for Uber. All right. There's a lot of people out there. Believe it or not, my average Uber driver makes about $2,000 to $3,000. But let's just say it's $3,000. I say, look, Susie, at the end of the day, most of the time, people usually they don't have a savings problem. They have a cash flow problem, right? But at the end of the day, I'm going to go ahead and show you how we're going to position you to go ahead and get ahead. Most of the time, people have 100% of their income going into 100% of their lifestyle, right? If you do that for the next 3 to 5 years, there's a good chance probably, you're not really going to get ahead, and you're probably already sitting in the same position that you're at. It's just you're a different age. Now, here's what I do is I let people understand the concepts of saving a certain percentage. So let's just say they don't have to save 10%. This is just a recommendation to kind of set the bar where most of my clients usually are at. So let's just say the client's making $3,000, and I get them into the habit of saving something. At the end of the day, I said, look, average client saves maybe about 10%. So they're going to have 100% of their income going to 90% of their lifestyle. And I'd say 10% towards their future. So with me? And then so basically from there, I help them understand how to go ahead and start saving money. Now, think of it this way. For every dollar that you make, you should insure your income at least for a penny. Does that make sense? So if you make $3,000, 1% of that is about $30 a month. That can easily go into a term insurance policy, right? Now, obviously, a lot of the people who understand buy term invest a difference, you can go ahead, this is kind of like buy term invest a difference, but you see that 1% of the income is $30, the remaining balance is $270. So let's just say we're going to have $300 setting aside. But before I do that, I asked the client, I said, but at the end of the day, if you're able to go ahead and save more, you're more than welcome to. But if you don't have the discretionary income, at least get into the habit of saving something, right? So my question to them is, what are you comfortable with? And then once they say it, they own it. That sets the bar on, okay, here's some chips to play with when it comes to doing my recommendations, right? So once I do that, I help them understand. And by the way, I don't have any securities license. I talk about active investments. So what I do here is based on that $300 that usually what my average client's going to do, I'm going to go ahead and show them how to position that into their investments. Now, obviously, most people here today, they usually have a bank account already, right? And if they work for some Fortune 500 company or corporate company, they basically probably have a 401k or TSP, some type of qualified plan. So a qualified plan basically, usually it's exposed to the market, which are usually active managed investments. Anything that's active, I would say is Bitcoin, stocks, 401ks, variable account, any type of variable accounts, variable annuities, mutual funds. Flipping a house, you actively flipping a house is an active investment, right? A business, obviously PHP. This is an active investment. We're constantly running our business. But you can see that I'm not biased when it comes to saving money in just safe investments. My recommendation is if they're young, you should be inside an active investment. Obviously, especially for the millennials here, we're actively investing into ourselves and into PHP. Obviously, you can't beat the average return for a Fortune 500 company. They're happy with 12, 15%, on the upside. But PHP is growing at like 52 or 55% in every single metric. So obviously you want to invest into PHP, get some equity, right? But at the end of the day, invest into what you know, because it doesn't make sense for you to go ahead and say, I don't know anything about Bitcoin. I see it on the news. And then you start investing in Bitcoin, then you lose the money, right? But anytime you profit here, you should probably be putting at least some of that money into a safe investment so you can shelter it from exposure. Now, if you're in your 20s or 30s, I'd recommend probably putting about 70% of your resources, like what we do when it comes to investing, big event tickets or an office and stuff like that. We're actively investing into our business because we want to increase our capacity as far as income, right? But here's the thing: 70% of our investments should go towards an active, aggressive fund. You can earn high returns. You can also lose principal. Now, anytime you profit here, I recommend you put some money into a safe investment. So in this case, you can get 12, 15% on the highs. You can also lose 15, 20% on the lows, right? But on a safe investment, usually most people, when they put money into a safe investment, it's probably getting maybe what, 1, 2. I know Navy Federal gives 3% on a CD. But our safe investments are offering anywhere, I would say on an average, maybe 3 to 7 to give a better example. But let's say it's 4 to 8 is what the average return is getting with no downside risk. So now you've helped the client understand the structure. Now, one thing I'll tell you is that most people, they don't have a financial structure. Think of it this way. Let's say Apple had the sales department and the administration department switch departments. Do you think Apple would run just as efficient? Probably not, right? It's kind of like saying, you know what? You don't want to be cooking inside your bathroom, right? There's a structure for everything. The problem with society here today is that we never get the opportunity to get a structure, especially for our finances. And the problem is that when an emergency happens, we end up exhausting all our resources. And this is the reason why life insurance is very important. So if something were to happen, this income stops. You see this Uber driver, she's making $3,000 a month. If she, God forbid, got into an accident and she can no longer drive for Uber, and let's just say, actually, let's take a step back. God forbid she passes away. What happens to all this investments and also the kids that are relying, the 2 kids that are relying on her income? It's probably going to get exhausted, right? So this $30 policy, let's say, provides for a 34-year-old female. Let's say we use Anico. It's a $500,000 policy. Now that provides the no lifestyle change. The family is going to be okay, right? Now in this case, back in the day, life insurance usually only paid out when somebody passes away. Now, what if this person got diagnosed and they can't do the daily activities because let's say they get into an accident and they can't, bathe, toilet, dress, eat, transfer. And let's just say this policy, for an example, is providing $2,500 as replacement of income that she was basically providing for her kids. So now you can see how that is able to go ahead and take care of the family, even though she hasn't passed away yet. Now, here's another scenario. You probably know somebody who's got diagnosed of a heart attack, stroke, or cancer. Believe it or not, this is what the new type of life insurance provides. A lot of those companies, they don't provide these living benefits. Believe it or not, you actually have to pay extra, and they actually don't even try to upsell you on it. Our policies, they provide it, no extra charge. And here's the good thing about it. Client, let's say, gets diagnosed of stage 4 cancer or a heart attack. Let's say 80%, if you're using National Life Group, can accelerate the death benefit while they're alive. So let's say that's $400,000. Here's a large lump sum, tax-free. Now, you can see with this structure, it makes the financial plan impenetrable. Now, as you can see here, this is just understanding how compound interest works. You get a 0%, 4%, 8%. Let's just say this is the client that doesn't want to put their money in the market because they want to put it in the bank account or under the mattress. Chances are you're not going to get any interest. By the way, full disclosure, I'm not including any taxes. This is just a pure interest on the account, reinvesting all the profits. 0%, $250 a month, which is $3,000 in a year. If the client, let's just say, put it inside a checking account with Chase, guess what? After 30, 35 years, you can see what the account has grown to. Obviously, nothing has compounded as far as interest. Now, let's just say usually something in a 4%, usually it's, I would say, fixed annuities, maybe municipal bonds, which is a pretty safe area to go ahead and put your money. You can see that the returns the first year, it's not very sexy, but at the same time, you can see over a span of 30, 35 years, you can see that the $1 has probably done at least $2.2 worth of work down the road, right? Now you can see on the 8%, which is where usually index annuities are illustrated, around 6 to 7, 8% to be exact, but sometimes reach as high as 8%. Here's what an 8% consistently every single year would grow the account to basically making that $1 do $5.7 worth of work based on those numbers. Now, between the three, obviously, most people are not educated or never exposed to utilizing the money to grow in different accounts. And there's places where you can go ahead and put that in. It's just people are never exposed to it. So same amount of time, same amount of time, same amount of money, which is $250 a month for 30, 35 years, let's just say. Different interest rate, completely different result. Now, I like to use the analogy where, let's just say I'm in Las Vegas right now. I want to go to New York, and I got a scooter, right? And I'm driving this scooter. Can you imagine how long it's going to take for me to go from here to New York? That's kind of like the speed of how I'm getting to my retirement goal, right? Now, let's just say I got a Tesla. It's autopilot, and I go from Las Vegas to New York, and it's, I got a full GPS. I got everything. There's a blueprint with where I want to go. Who do you think is going to get there faster, right? So you want to go ahead and have a predictable and understanding on your vehicles when it comes to choosing what's the right type of vehicle when it comes to investing for the future, all right? And here is people to understand when it comes to what the outcome is going to look like as far as what we're solving for X. Now, one thing I'll tell you is, let's say a millennial. I like to utilize millennials because we tend to not like to save money. But this can be used for any single person. But let's just say an average person saving 20s or 30s, they start saving 100, 200, 300 bucks a month, 5 or 10% of their income. Let's just say they start saving 200 bucks a month, 300 bucks a month, and they're getting a consistent, maybe 7% return consistently throughout the 20, 30 years of their life. Obviously, there's a principle that they're saving, but the compounding growth is basically, you can see with the dollar signs here. This right here is what we call the accumulation phase. So by the time we hit our 60s, obviously, a lot of people are not trust fund babies, but we can always position ourselves. As long as you have a good job, you're paying, they're making $2,000, $3,000 a month, they can set aside something and start accumulating wealth. And keep in mind, this is not just a 401k. This is not just your IUL. This is maybe the extra house that they bought that they're renting out, and then they sell it, they liquidate it, and they sell it, and then they put it into an annuity. But let's just say over this 20, 30 years, conservatively, this is what the average millennial should save money for their retirement. Let's say they hit $1 million, and by the time, let's say they hit at age 65. You moved it from the aggressive investments, let's say real estate, 401ks, and you move into a safe investment like an index annuity, right? And consistently, this account's probably getting maybe on an average, maybe 6, 7%, but I'm going to use 7% just for an example. Client basically is no longer exposed to the market. When the market goes up, let's say you get 50 to maybe 70% of whatever the market gets. But when the market goes down, you don't lose anything, right? For those of you that know the blackjack analogy, it's pretty much the same thing. Now, let's just say we've positioned $1 million, and now it's sitting inside an account, and let's just say it's getting 7% consistently per year. Now, you can see here, $1 million at 7%, that generates about $70,000 in interest. Now, let's just say, all right, you know what, Forrest? Hey, how's it going? How did my account do? Oh, you got a 7.2% return this year. Awesome. I'm just going to pull my interest. You still got $1 million, right? Watch what happens here. Every single year, let's just say you pull off the interest, and keep in mind, this is just for an example. It might go 5, it might go 7, it might go 8, but I want you guys to understand the concept. Next year, it gets a 7% again. You know what, Forrest? Awesome. I'd like to pull my 7%, my interest, my 70 grand again. I'm going to go travel the world. I'll see you back in a year on my anniversary date. Awesome. Great. Age 67. You notice what's happening? You see the million generating 7% interest, and you never see this, you never see the million die as you're pulling out money in retirement. Now, this is something that's very, very powerful because my mother, being 68 years old, she was never exposed to anything like this. And it's just a basic concept. What's crazy about it is that, let's just say over here, you can see at age 67, 10 years go by, and you've pulled out $700,000 and you still got $1 million. It's kind of like having a golden goose laying golden eggs every single year, and you never ever have to worry about the golden goose, going away, right? But here's the cool thing about this is that even though that's the game plan, obviously we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So one thing we can do is we can insure it. And that's the reason why I recommend not just with the principal that they're saving. Here's the interest that's growing, let's say to the million. And here's the insurance to make sure you ensure that you get to that goal. Obviously, there's the accumulation phase. And then most people, they say, well, I love the market. I don't want to get out. I said, you know what? You've already accumulated the wealth. What about preserving it? Or actually, why don't we do this? You don't even have to roll over the whole thing. I tell people, how much of the money that you've accumulated would you like to preserve and not have exposed to losing money, but still get a participation on the growth? And they say, you know what? Sometimes all of it. Sometimes they say, you know what? I'll put 400 grand. I'll put 100 grand. Some clients will just put 100,000 just to go ahead and see if this is legit. And trust me, it's legit. All right. So we represent a lot of Fortune 500 companies. I let people understand that, look, I work with a lot of platinum companies like Fidelity and Guarantee Life. I drop names like Allianz, John Hancock. You've probably heard it. If you watch golf or tennis, these are companies that we represent. They're all Fortune 500 companies. And I'm an independent broker with PHP agencies where I hang my license. So based on that, that's pretty much my presentation for concepts and strategies. Obviously, I'm interacting with them because they're going to have questions in between. But this usually, I would say, takes about 15 to 20 minutes for them to soak up the information. And from there, I do the FLS and I gather and gather the facts, gather the goals, and then basically on the FLS, all we're doing is here's where they're at, here's where they're trying to go. I sell them a product, a bridge to get them to their financial goals. And that's it. It's pretty much all education and just sharing information. Now, I'm going to go ahead and share with you guys a couple illustrations here. I'm a very big fan of the Accumulator Plus 10 with Fidelity and Guarantee Life. I utilize Retirement Pro as well. But here's my 2 cents is I provide a guaranteed income for the clients, pretty much paying out almost like dividends. So just living off the interest and still accumulating growth inside the account based on what their lifestyle is. And I look at their Social Security, how much that's paying out, if they have a pension, if they have real estate income, just to make sure that they have enough to go ahead and fund their lifestyle. But here is 2 illustrations. I'm not sure if you guys can you guys see it? Forrest, can you see that? Yeah, awesome. So the first one I'm going to show you is this is with FNG. I utilize the Barclays Trailblazer, and keep in mind the difference between this versus the Retirement Pro. There's no guaranteed lifetime income. There is no cost on having this annuity. It's 0%. There isn't access to a 1% on the management fee, which is still an index fund, but it has a higher yield on the return. Keep in mind, this participation rate is where it's at right now, it's 140% participation rate, credits every 2 years. I hope I'm not losing everybody, all right? So that means that if the client says, you know what, I got 200,000 and I'm working at the MGM as a housekeeper, and then my husband, he's in the gaming industry, he has 200,000 also with MGM. We got 400 grand. We don't want to be exposed to the market. Great, I got a great product. I'd like to show you some illustrations and show you some scenarios. So you got 400 grand. This is just for a brief summary, but let's say 400,000 is what both the clients combined have. As you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and show you what the track record on the illustration looks like. This is taking the actual numbers from 2000, you can see here 2008 to 2018, the 10-year track record. So I'm not just plucking a feather and saying, hey, we're going to get a 10% return here today, and then 5%, and then 2%. This is showing the average return on what this account would have done based on that track record of the 10 years. So based on this, in 08, obviously we all know the market took a dive. So 09, 2010, the market started going up. You can see 11, 12 right here. So this is 08, 09, market started going up. You can see the 400,000 goes to 459. 2010, 2011, it credits, by the way, every 2 years. And it's a 140% participation rate. So anytime the account basically does well, if you divide 140% by 2, that's about 70% participation rate, which is pretty good. I think it's the most competitive right now. But that's based on here today. That can change, by the way. So what's happening is every 2 years, this is crediting based on the performance, what the market did. As you can see, 2 years go by, it's 459. Markets 08, 09, 2010, 2011. 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, and here's where the account value would stand. The average return without no downside, no cost on the annuity, its average is 7.48. Now keep in mind this is with the lowest, let's just say worst case scenario, with all those facts. Let's say we put all the lowest returns in the first 5 years in the front. This is what the outcome would look like. And the best 5 years in the back end, here's what the return would look like. You can see it's still a pretty good return, right? And then the highest, if you wanted to go ahead and put it together where you have the highest. So here's what I will tell you. It's a really good return. Keep in mind, this is a pure accumulation annuity. Now, what I recommend is when a client, let's say they put their money inside this account and the market goes down, they should put more money into this, because if the market goes down again, they still don't lose any money. But if the market goes up, they get all the upside, right? So I'm going to show you based on this. This is a $400,000. Let's say Joe and Susie both are working at MGM, and one's a housekeeper, one's a gamer on the tables, and both of them have 200 grand. We roll it over. This is about 400,000, and you can see here this accumulation is 400,000, and every 2 years you can see the interest crediting here. There's no deduction on any asset management fee or anything as far as income riders. Now what's happening here is you can see the accumulation growth. Now obviously at age 70, at 70 and a half, they have to start taking RMDs. So you have to make sure you tailor the annuity with the RMDs after 70 and a half, or at 71. So that's a pure accumulation growth. I show them these two different illustrations for this purpose, but now I want to show you, let's just say this client has Social Security. They're both collecting, since they both work 20, 30 years, maybe collecting $2,000 a piece. That's $4 grand a month. They need $60,000 to live comfortably. So let's just say 4,000, that's 48,000 is what they're collecting in Social Security. We're going to pull 30 grand every single year at age 60. Keep in mind, let's say they're 59 and a half years old. We're already talking to them and saying, look, why don't we position your money to go ahead and preserve it now? So here's what we're going to do. We do an in-service distribution. You call the HR department, ask them for their 1035 exchange to transfer it over to Fidelity or whatever company you're using. Make sure you use their internal transfer forms, not Fidelity's, because they're going to kick it back 9 times out of 10. So based on this, 400,000 rolls over. Here's what the outcome looks like based on these projections. Obviously, guys, this can change, right? But this is a pure accumulation vehicle. Market's getting, let's say the market did well, it's 14%. Here's where the account stands, and we're going to pull $30,000 plus their 48,000 in Social Security. That's 78,000, which exceeds more than what they need. Keep in mind, this 30 grand, they have to claim that as income, and they have to pay taxes on that. So you got to make sure you're working good with a really professional tax advisor to help them understand their tax bracket. But that's 78 grand, let's say, combined income. So we're pulling out 30,000 from this account. Now notice what happens here. 400,000. Here's a return. Here's what the account is after pulling out 30 grand. They got more money than what they had. Now this is on a good year. Keep this in mind. Now if it's a bad year, they're obviously going to have less money. But here's 30,000 again. They're pulling out. You can see there's no interest there. Now they basically 400,000 now at 394. They've already pulled out 60 grand. Now keep in mind, the year after they're pulling out 30,000 again. It's 454. Here's what happens. You notice that the account's still continuously growing, and over the span of 10 years, they pulled out 270 grand. And usually, based on this performance, they have pretty much more money, or sometimes they have the same amount of money as what they had originally, because I'm pulling less than what the interest is crediting. So how I position the client is I had this golden goose just providing income to supplement, and they can go travel the world and do whatever it is that they want and enjoy life, especially in their golden years. And keep in mind, this is at age 60. They don't have to retire at age 70, right? So just easily by sitting down with somebody like myself or a PHP agent that's proficient in this industry, we can easily position people to go ahead and save 5 to maybe 10 years of their life saving money for retirement, because we give them a strategic goal. And now based on that, they're pulling out 71.5. They pulled out over a span of 20 years. This is 570,000. You can see here 458,000. Obviously, you can pull more money out of this account. It's going to deplete the funds. And the other variable would be the good variable about this is that if the account, if the market was to go down, you don't lose any money. But when the market goes up, you actually participate, I would say 140% every 2 years of the combined interest. So based on that, I like to print this out, especially if they're a baby boomer. I print these out and I print out page 6 for the client. You can see here page 6. And I give them these 2 scenarios. And I also show them what a guaranteed lifetime income rider would be with Retirement Pro. But this usually gets people really thinking, you know what? I want to go ahead and be in control of my money. And especially with the Retirement Pro, you can go ahead and still accumulate money, but you have to go through this thing called a breakthrough period. It's a little bit more advanced training, but this actually gives them concrete understanding of where they're at as far as what their account value is, and it's just a pure accumulation with no downside risk. But outside of that, that's the 2 illustrations, and I think that's pretty much it, guys. Oh, last thing I want to share with you guys is, oh yeah, actually, yeah, that should be it. I'll leave this to Q&A if anybody has any questions. Hope that
Good stuff.
Information.
Good stuff there, Karl. Good stuff. And I'll remind everybody too, if you've got any questions, you can go ahead and type those in to there's a chat box at the bottom right corner of your screen. You can type those questions in the chat box, and we'll get to those. But no, that's awesome. And you know, a couple notes I was taking from that were, you know, you started right there in the beginning and talked about how important it is that we ask questions about these things, even if you're not the you know, the retirement expert in your office. You know, be asking questions so that we can take the conversation to that place. You know, if we're not asking the questions about retirement, we're never going to uncover the opportunities for the annuity. So it all starts with asking those questions. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And in building the rapport too, you know, that was something that you mentioned. I think that was step 1 on your sheet. Building rapport with the clients is crucial. You know, if we say, hi, how are you? Here's an annuity product, that's not going to get you where you want to go. It's all about you know, building rapport, building trust with the client, and forming that relationship. You know, once you're there and you've built that trust, you know, then we can go into this stuff. They're going to be a lot more receptive to your message. So I'm glad you mentioned that as well. And then I had a question for you that came up here, Karl, is that, you know, when you showed that illustration for the accumulator plus 10, and that's a very, very solid product for growth there. You mentioned you use that Barclays Trailblazer crediting strategy. So we got a question for you there is, when you're taking an app and you go into that strategy, how do you explain that? If you get a question where the client says, well, what is that? I've never heard of this Barclays Trailblazer. Do you have a quick response to how you explain that alternative index?
The one thing I'll tell you is crediting strategies. Let me pull it up real quick here. As you can see here, I explain this is one of the best performing. To my understanding, it's not with Fidelity, and Fidelity is basically just utilizing an asset management fee. I'm sorry, an asset management or somebody who's managing the funds. Obviously, we all know, or a lot of us should know, the Barclays. They're a bank, a credit card company. They're the ones. A lot of these accounts down below here are, I believe, with just the S&P. I've looked at the strategies and I've looked at all the detailed notes on some of the most aggressive funds with an index strategy. But this is one of the best performing based on what was showing when I called FNG. And keep this in mind. If you guys don't know which annuity, you guys can call the carriers at the sales department and they'll go ahead and run everything with you and show you what each company can do and each crediting option. So you have whether, think of this like as a menu, right? You're looking at this green one right here, which is the Barclays. This one's pepperoni and sausage. This one's, you know, ham and cheese. There's different types of strategy. But at the end of the day, this one is the one that really resonated with me. And I, believe it or not, I'm going to be FIRA or maybe even a 401k with this. My company to where it needs to get. But at the same time, you're going to be able to go ahead and participate on some good growth with no downside and no cost on the fees. So there's another opportunity here. You can see here there's a 1% charge with the growth, a higher yield, which is about 160%. But at the end of the day, what I do is I explain to them, look, there's different options on where you can place your money. The accumulator plus is just the vehicle. The crediting strategy is what the parameters inside the vehicle would be. Obviously, you can see here 100% is inside the green. That's where 100% of it is pepperoni and sausage. You know what I mean?
No, and that makes sense. Excuse me. That makes sense, and that's a good explanation on that too. And just to echo one thing you said there is that you see all these different options for crediting strategies here. You've got the 2 Barclays strategies, and you've got all the S&P strategies. Just a quick side note: just about every index annuity product out there, you're going to have the S&P as an option to allocate to. And then a lot of them, like this one, and then several others out there, are having some type of alternative index. This one's using that Barclays. And these indexes do, as we saw in that illustration, they do perform very well. But you'll see some different ones in there. And so like Karl said, if you've got questions on what those indexes are, the carrier sales desk will walk you through. They're going to be the best place to kind of tell you how those break down. But as I explained to clients when I was in the field, is saying, you've got your S&P that everybody's familiar with. You see it every time you turn on CNN, it's in the corner. And then you've got these other indexes that just allow you to diversify a little bit better.
Right.
So that's awesome.
And I wanted to share also is I position a lot of my clients, especially the ones that have at least 300, 400, 500,000, to still accumulate that. And one thing I'll tell you is that I put them into the green, which is the one with no charge, which is 140% participation rate. And then obviously, the market, I show them on my iPhone, the stock market, where the market's at the last 10 years. You can see that the growth on the bull run is very high. So it's like almost at the peak of Mount Everest, if you could say. Obviously, if the market's at an all-time high, it's prone to go ahead and probably go down. There's a good chance it's going to correct itself or even crash. Right? So what if we could position you to go ahead and lock in all that growth? And if the market goes down, you don't lose anything. If the market goes down, that's when I put my clients into the one with a 1% asset management fee to get the higher yield. Because obviously, once the market goes down, there's nothing but high upside potential. So you want to get the highest yields. So I'll move them from one strategy to the second crediting strategy, which has a 1% charge. It's not that much. Think of it this way: if $1 million and the market took a dive, you didn't lose any money. Now I move you into the Barclays Trailblazer with a spread of the 1%. What happens is if the market still went down and you didn't lose any money, 1% of $1 million is 10 grand. So you're still with 990,000, right? But if the market goes up, you can get really high returns. What I showed you, you'll probably get 3% sometimes, based on what the examples that I shared with you.
Gotcha. Good stuff there. All right, looks like we've got a couple of questions coming in the question box here. Let me read some of these off to you. Say, let's see, what's your favorite strategy, Karl? I think we just answered that one with the Trailblazers. What kind of fees are associated with this annuities?
0. Barclays Trailblazer, 140% participation rate. It's 0% on the fees. So just right off the bat, let's say a client, I like to use $1 million, for example. If a client has $1 million and they have it sitting at a mutual fund, especially if they're over 60 years old, that's a really good position for you to have leverage to say, look, what if I can help you save maybe 3 or 4%? Because if you look at the mutual funds that you're probably being charged on the M&Es and all that other broker fees and stuff like that, it's averaging about 3%. So if you've got $1 million and it goes down, let's say 10%, that's $900,000. Keep in mind, you're still 3% on an average, depending on which company you use. 3% of $1 million is 30 grand. So you didn't just lose 100,000. You lost an additional $50,000 to go ahead and have your money still with that asset management company. So at the same time, you're able to go ahead and position them. So you have the leverage because you have an insurance license. You can position people into an IRA funded by an annuity. And it's one of the safest places you can go ahead and put people when it comes to not having to pay any extra charges. And the fees are a lot less than income compared to being exposed to the market.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And then another question here too, and this is about the participation rate. Maybe you wouldn't mind touching on this real quick. Is how does the participation rate work? How do we have a participation rate that's more than 100%, like in that example?
Think of it this way. So let's say it's 140% participation rate, right? That's in 2 years. At 140 divided by 2, it's technically 70% on an average per year, but they participate 140% credited after 2 years. So if the market got a 20% return, you're going to get a 14% return, right? So it's 10% each year. That's 20%. So you're only going to get 70% of that each year. But it's credited based on a 2-year crediting strategy. So if the account, let's just say today is the 23rd, policy gets issued, actually the draft date or the issue date was the 22nd. Keep in mind, this is something, so a good tip. Buyout dates for annuities usually are the 1st, 8th, 15th, and the 22nd. So if they have all the documents, they're going to go ahead and issue the annuities based on those dates, and it credit your anniversary based on that buy date. So what happens is that the first birthday of the policy being enforced, if we have the Barclays trip, crediting will happen in 2020, May 23rd. The year after, whatever the market did, the last 2 years is 2021, the crediting will occur and will be applied to the account. So the participation rate, let's say the market did 10% this year and 10% again next year. You're probably going to get about a 14% return. So if you got $1 million, you're at 1.140 million, right? Now, if the market got a negative 10% and a negative 10% again, you're still at $1 million. You didn't lose any money. Does that make sense?
Perfect. I think that covers it. I think that covers it pretty well. And then another question that came in here too, and I'm wondering how you look at this is, Karl, what features do you look at as far as picking the right product for the client? Like, what are just a couple of bullet points that you consider as far as selecting the product?
Just asking the right questions, making sure, look, are you looking to go ahead and touch this money? Do you need this money for anything? Are you looking to make any major purchases? Obviously, as we're doing the FLS, our job is to design and kind of just be the financial doctor to analyze what makes sense when it comes to setting up a good financial game plan for retirement and insurance. But we just help people make sound financial decisions based on whatever their goal is. Obviously, everybody needs to protect their mortgage. Everybody needs to protect their income. Everybody needs to protect their kids, right? So worst case scenario, you can go ahead and protect your kids for a very small amount for insurance, 20, 30 bucks, 50 bucks, at least get started. You can always build off of it. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that you should just go for a Hail Mary. Hey, you should get $1 million, $700 a month IUL, right? Sometimes someone was like, well, they got $2,000 discretion. It doesn't mean that they have the discipline to do it. But at the same time, we want to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and let's start off with this, and you can go ahead and max fund it later down the road, or let's set you up. If you can't qualify, here's my other recommendation. But I give people the opportunity. Here's an annuity, here's an IUL. And I like to make sure that all our clients are not just making decisions based on biased decisions. I like to give our clients options, but I tailor it more towards life insurance because I truly believe in it. And just the living benefits alone, National Life Group and American National are just phenomenal. You can't find almost anything comparable to the living benefits. So.
Absolutely, totally agree with you there. Totally agree with you. And then, and just to follow up on something that you mentioned there about their goals, is when someone asks me what's the right product, it all comes down to me is, well, what's the goal with this money? Just like you mentioned, I mean, are you needing access to the money, and if so, when? What's the timeline look like? Those things I think will definitely help as far as guiding us in the right direction to the right fit form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a lot of cases. For example, I got a case I'm working on designing right now. Clients probably worth about, I would say about $3 million. Make great money, living way below their minimum, very frugal, very thrifty. They want to put like $1,000 a month on guideline premium into a National Life Group policy, to say. They're 49 years old right now. They want to retire within 5 or 7 years before the average typical 60 mark, right? So what I'll do is I'll design a max funded guideline premium for National Life Group or Anico, and I'll have them max fund that and have them work the next 7 to maybe 10 years, accumulate probably about maybe $150,000, and then have them retire utilizing that, position themselves to retire utilizing what they have access to as far as pensions and their Social Security to replace the income that they're basically utilizing from the IUL. If that makes sense. So let's just say they need $40,000 a year. Go ahead and we'll structure something where they're contributing enough money in retirement, let's say at age 55 to 60. They're pulling, let's say 30, 40,000, exhaust all the IUL money, and then they're going to go ahead and transition to the retirement with Social Security and pensions and also their 401k, and then just have an RV and travel in the States.
Perfect. Perfect. No, I love it. And then let's see, a quick question here. I want to make sure we get to is are there any caps or hidden fees on these?
Obviously, I just showed you just a basic understanding what the 400,000 as an example would be. Keep in mind, if this is a 401k, it's considered a qualified plan, right? Which means that you procrastinated paying the tax, you put it inside a container, you're not paying the taxes on it. However, you're getting the interest that you would have gave Uncle Sam, which is the benefit, right? So you're going to grow that money, and then by the time you're of age, you have access to it with no penalties. So from 59.5 to 70.5, that's the ideal time to go ahead and access it. So whatever you pull out, 401k or IRA, any type of IRA outside of a Roth, you're going to pull out that money. You're going to have to claim that as income as if you're working, if that makes sense. So if you work at Jamba Juice and you make 30 grand a year and you pull 30 grand, 30,000 from Jamba Juice, 30,000 from the 401k, you made 60 grand, then you talk to your tax advisor, you pay taxes on that. So that's the tax implications. If it's a non-qualified, you just pay capital gains tax, which is just on the top of whatever you put in. So let's say you pay, or you put $1,000, it grows to 200 grand, you're going to pay capital gains tax based on just the growth, not the 100,000 initial principal.
Excellent, excellent.
15 or 20%. Quote me on that.
Yeah, don't quote me on it either. I say talk to the tax pro, right? Exactly. And then one other thing I wanted to touch on real quick, because while you've got your screen up there still, do you mind going back to that page that shows the best, worst, and most recent?
Oh yes, absolutely. So what's crazy is that this used to show after the first quarter of, I think it was after March, they updated it. This was actually showing 8.4 or 8.10 or something like that. It was doing really well down. So this is a really, really good product. It's still holding a good 7%. But you can see here the lowest based on the returns, and this is coming from Fidelity. I didn't punch these numbers in. This is what the outcome would have looked like based on these returns. You can see the lowest with the first 5 years, what the crediting would have done. You can see the first 5 years here, the account basically, this is what the client pulling the 30 grand. You can see after 5 years, the client's gone down to 300,000. Got a little bit of a return here after the first crediting. However, over here, this is where it starts pretty much maintain afloat. But this is the worst case. And by the way, this is just a projection based on the outcome of the last 10 years. If the market from 2008 to 2019, what the market would have done in this account with this strategy the last 10 years if you started this account in 2009.
And your screen there is not moving. Is it? We're still on the allocation page. Is that?
Oh, I apologize. Give me a second.
There we go. That's what we're looking for. Perfect.
Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Just a refresher here. You can see here the worst 5 years in the beginning. Obviously, when the market went down, 08, 09. I'm assuming this is 08, 09 right here. I'm sorry, when the market went down during the worst years. This is the performance. You didn't lose any money, but you're still taking withdrawals. This is based on the 30,000 withdrawals. You can see the 400 grand, and there's a small little crediting. And then here's where the market started picking up again. right? You can see.
Yeah, and this page, I think this page can be really helpful. I know there's a lot of stuff on these illustrations, and it's kind of easy to get lost in them. But in my experience, when I've been presenting with illustrations, you get that question, well, what's it going to do? And all we can really guarantee is that it's not going to lose anything. But this is an awesome thing to refer to, is you can go, well, here's what it actually has done. Give you a really realistic idea of what's going on with this. So I think there's a lot of value right on this one page.
This is huge. This is the first thing I show the clients based on, look, here's some hypothetical assumptions based on the track record of what the market has done. So we extracted that information and we plug it in to show you what the outcome can look like. Now, this can be a better performance or it can be a not as good of a performance, but you can see based on the numbers here, this is the lows and here's the highs. But here's the most recent, the last 10 years.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, Karl, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I think we got to most of the questions here. I see one more question here on fees. I just want to touch on that real quick. These annuity products, unless we're adding some type of rider, they're not going to have any fees, no explicit fees, no hidden fees. So I just want to make sure we address that question there. And then I'm just scrolling through here, making sure we got all these. Looks like we did get all these questions here. And so before we wrap it up here, I just want to say to everyone, thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're going to be doing these webinars monthly going forward. And Karl, thank you for taking the time. I know having a free hour in the middle of the day is kind of a luxury in our business. So definitely thank you for taking the time out.
Oh, one thing
anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, just keep in mind, this accumulator plus 10, doesn't matter what crediting option you choose. It pays out not as good as the Retirement Pro, but obviously if the client really likes this product versus the Retirement Pro, this pays out at 0.0675. I think it's actually 0.065. It went down a little bit, but at the same time, you write your 3 apps and 300,000 points, you'll get paid out at 7.5%. Really, really good product, and I think it's a really good pure accumulation annuity with no downside.
Perfect. Excellent. And good segue on that promotion too, because I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. And while we've got about a minute left, we talked about those promotions at the beginning of the call, running every month. There's the 1% bonus that Karl just mentioned, as well as the 50K gets you on that training call. But the other one, pretty exciting one going on right now, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this, is first one to write $1 million, first one to have $1 million placed in calendar year 2019 gets a $10,000 prize. Karl's smiling ear to ear because he knows exactly where he stands on this. But I got to just say, it's basically a dead heat between Karl and Stephen Beadle. Hopefully Stephen Beadle's watching this as well. So it would be pretty interesting to see who wins that prize. I don't know which one. I don't know which one of you my money's on yet at this point.
But just gotta say, Steve, just buckle up, man. It's coming.
Perfect. All right. Well, Karl, you know what? I want to unmute everybody here. We still got in excess of 40 people on the line here. I'm going to turn on all your microphones. Give me 1 second here. And did that work? You know what? I don't know if that worked. I'm trying to unmute everybody at once, and I don't know if I can all at once. Maybe we'll try that next time. Darn it. All right. Well, I was hoping I could get everybody unmuted so we could at least say hello and thank you, but for some reason, not happening this time. Anyway, on behalf of everybody on the call, I just want to say again, Karl, thank you. Thank you. There's some awesome nuggets in there, and we'll stay tuned for next month's. And then also everyone who registered for this, you're going to get an email with a recording of this call. So that'll be coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There we go. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks again, Karl. Hope everyone has an awesome rest of your day. And as we're approaching closeout, if you need help with anything on the annuity front, you give me or Lucretia a call, and we're happy to help you with it. Okay. So thank you, PHP. We'll be talking again soon.
Bye.